Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. As extreme cold temperatures continue in the Yukon, more racers in the Montane Yukon Arctic Ultra Marathon drop out. There are still a few athletes pushing on hundreds of kilometers and many days into the race, and a team of German researchers is monitoring their every move. Cheryl Kawacha tells us why.
1, 2, 3, race!
Running, biking, skiing in extreme cold at extreme distances. The Yukon Arctic Ultra takes a special kind of athlete. It's what interests researchers from the Center for Space Medicine and Extreme Environments in Berlin.
I just always jokingly say with the race, we're preparing for space travel, of course, but they want to know what happens to people in extreme environments, and space travel will be extreme to whoever one day will do it. And maybe we were able to contribute a little bit to it, making it successful. I don't know.
For more than a decade, scientist Matthias Steiner has been coming to study the racers here in the Yukon.
I'm interested in the longest distance of 640 kilometers, so it's about 400 miles. It's a huge impact on the physiology, on energy transfer, energy expenditure.
He's interested in how the body adapts in the extremes, like sleep and muscle breakdown. Race director Robert Polhammer says it's helpful for science and the racers.
They do get a lot of data and information about themselves if they want to, which would help them with their performances in the future.
In addition to drawing blood and doing paperwork with racers along the way, study participants wear a tracker.
I'm wearing one right now by myself because I'm part of the control group. So I'm operator and scientist, but also subject.
And as grueling as it is for the racers out on the course, it also puts the researchers to the test.
It's also difficult, right, to go from place to place, to endure the cold. The technology has to endure the cold, of course.
But the biggest difficulty this year is the weather and the ever-shrinking number of participants in the race and the study.
1 by 1, or rather 2 by 2, by 3, by 1 by 2, they are dropping out. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it.
There are still a handful of racers out on the course, and so for now, the research continues. Cheryl Kawacha, CBC News, Ross River, Yukon.
2 songs by R&B artists are facing backlash for their use of what many consider a racial slur for Inuit. Songs from Kendrick Lamar, Nicki Minaj, and soca artist Trinidad Killa use the E word. It's drawn criticism from around the world. James C. Fournier is an Inuk writer raised in Denendeh. He says the continued use of the word is disappointing.
We have a variety of names, none of which are Eskimos. We are Inuit, Inuvialuit, Inupiaq, Yupik, Kalaallit, and it just goes on, right? And it's just disappointing that every time this issue comes up, because it's just so straightforward, right? Our own names mean basically the same thing. It's just the people. So it's disrespectful when you call us by a name that isn't ours.
Lamar, Killa, and Minaj have yet to publicly respond to the criticism. The Yukon First Nations Culture and Tourism Association has paused some of its events this year. It made the announcement earlier this week. Tori Fitzpatrick has more.
The Attica Cultural Festival is among the events cancelled in 2025. The Arts and Culture Festival has been running annually since 2011. It brings together Indigenous artists from across the North. The announcement says the pause will ensure the organization's long-term sustainability. In a statement to CBC, the association said it's in a transition phase and is focused on initiatives that directly benefit its members. It says it's still committed to advocating for Indigenous tourism and arts in the Yukon. Other cancelled events include the Bead, Hide and Fur Symposium, as well as the UK Arts Market, a much-beloved Christmas craft market. One artist says she's devastated by the decision, adding some artists depend on these events to make a living. A full list of postponed events can be found on the association's website. Tori Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Power outages originally planned for this weekend in Fort Smith and Hay River NWT will be rescheduled to a later date. The outages were planned to accommodate testing for the refurbished Tulsan Power Station. In a post on social media, the Power Corporation says it'll notify the public once the outages have been rescheduled. The message also says that the schedule for commissioning Taltson could continue to change. That's because a number of tests are required, and if one test fails, it could delay subsequent tests by several hours. Over the years, there have been several attempts to rename the Northwest Territories. All of them ended with no agreement on a suitable alternative. Northwest Territories Premier R.J. Simpson is saying no to the idea of renaming the territory right now. Yellowknife MLA Robert Hawkins raised the issue in the legislature today. He asked the Premier to put renaming on the agenda for the next meeting of the Council of Leaders. The council is composed of territorial and Indigenous government leaders. Simpson says he's not willing to add renaming to the agenda.
I don't have an appetite to direct GNWT resources to this. This is the kind of initiative that would take significant consultation, in-person consultation in every community in the Northwest Territories. And so I'm the one who doesn't want to do this. I'll just put that out there.
Simpson added that he is willing to informally discuss the subject of renaming with other members of the council. A poll on naming the territory conducted in the late 1990s ended with the Northwest Territories being the most popular choice and Bob being the second most popular. Statistics Canada has released January's job numbers, and they've outpaced expectations. Canada's economy added 76,000 jobs, 3 times what many analysts were predicting. That gain was concentrated, though. Almost half was in manufacturing. But StatsCan also emphasized that sector would be especially vulnerable to U.S. tariffs. Meanwhile, the public sector was hit hard the past month. Over 8,000 jobs were lost there. Overall, the unemployment rate inched down 0.1 percentage point. Today, the Prime Minister issued a dire warning about Donald Trump, saying the new U.S. president is serious when he says he wants Canada to become America's 51st state. He made the remarks at a Canada-U.S. economic summit after journalists had left the event. And Justin Trudeau outlined his beliefs on why Trump wants this country. Evan Dyer reports.
So as much as I know the media would love to stick around for the Q&A, they're not going to be able to do that.
The doors were closed, but the mic was still on.
But Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. And it is a real thing. In my conversation with him,
The CBC News camera didn't capture all of Trudeau's remarks about annexation, but the Toronto Star captured more, and he made it clear he didn't believe the tariffs were about trade or drugs or migrants. I suggest that not only does the Trump administration know how many critical minerals we have, but that may be even why they keep talking about absorbing us and making us the 51st state, he told the room. They're very aware of our resources, of what we have, and they very much want to be able to benefit from those. Business mogul Arlene Dickinson was in the room with Trudeau as a member of his advisory council, and she says his remarks align with her own thinking.
I think my belief is very strongly, and has been, I've articulated this many times in my posts and my discussions with people, that I do believe the objective of Donald Trump is to take over our resources.
Trudeau has reportedly made similar comments privately to premiers, raising questions about how long the government has viewed this as Trump's endgame.
There can be questions to the Prime Minister and to other ministers who are involved. When did you know that this was a serious thing? Did you know he wasn't joking that first time? Like, what's really been going on behind the scenes here?
What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state.
The U.S. president has been open about wanting to use economic force to annex Canada. He's threatened close ally Denmark with war if it doesn't hand over Greenland.
I don't think that sovereignty is a concept that troubles Donald Trump a whole lot. He thinks this is an artificially drawn border. And so I think just this kind of blows the doors off of everything and really kind of opens up like really strange conversations about how we will protect our sovereignty.
Canada made a show of activity at the border, trying to prove it's serious about drugs and migrants to address Trump's stated concerns.
He needed to be able to say there was a threat to the United States. that comes in the form of fentanyl and border protection. And so it is a distraction. It is something that needs to be dealt with, but it's a distraction from what he really then talks about, which is access to our resources and access to having Canada be part of, the United States.
The apparent realization that Canada itself may be the target, raising fresh questions about how this country defends itself. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
U.S. tariffs on China are taking a toll on some Canadian businesses. Many small companies use Chinese materials in their Canadian-made products destined for the U.S. An exemption is supposed to protect them from the duties on Chinese goods, but today the White House signaled that exemption could soon be revoked. Anis Haidari has that story.
This underwear is sold by Canadians and shipped from Canada, but they might face a U.S. tariff on China because they contain material made there. It could mean sticker shock for Americans.
Those parcels are going to get to those U.S. customers, and there's going to be additional tax that they're going to have to pay that they may not have been aware of.
If that tax happens, it's because the Trump administration is talking about eliminating something called the de minimis exemption. That exemption eliminated tariffs on shipments from China to the U.S. when they're worth less than $800. That includes shipments from Canada, like clothes, if they're made with Chinese materials. This Montreal pantyhose maker is already laying off staff, in part because that exemption may go away. 85% of its sales are to the U.S.
This is an incredibly difficult decision to make. You're affecting people's jobs, people's livelihoods, you're adding uncertainty into their lives.
And without the exemption, the party's over for U.S. consumers who love cheap orders from retailers like Temu or Shein.
Virtually all of those shipments come in on a de minimis basis. No duties are paid, no taxes are collected. And so if you're a U.S. retailer, you're probably not thrilled about that.
A change would make Chinese competition more expensive, something U.S. competitors might like. For now, the Trump administration says it won't eliminate the exemption until it has an easier way to collect the money.
It's underwear made from trees.
Underwear made from trees, kind of like bamboo, right?
But Canadian businesses say they need clarity. They don't know how these tariffs might work or if they'll even be collected.
When the rules are so vague, it becomes almost impossible to decipher what needs to actually be done. And that is really, it's very frustrating to have to deal with.
The hope is any taxes on this underwear are brief. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
Forced and coerced sterilization of Indigenous people is still happening. The Survivors Circle for Reproductive Justice has supports available for Indigenous survivors. Join the National Registry and access up to $70,000 in healing support funds for individuals, families, and communities. The deadline to apply is March 31st. If you or someone you know has experienced forced and coerced sterilization, please call 1-877-386-0750 or visit reproductivejusticesurvivors.ca for more information.
The Kanuipita National Inuit Health Survey team is going to every community in Nunavut, speaking to Inuit about their health and wellness. And every answer will help us as Inuit determine our own priorities for a healthier future. Together, we will answer the question, Kanuipita, how are we? Find out when we're coming to your community. Learn more at qnihs.ca.
In your once stolen vehicle in West Africa.
That is crazy. Jumped in a car and then off they went.
I want my truck back. 300% increase in auto theft. 300%.
It's organized crime, well-financed.
They are selling vehicles that are insecure.
They're working on it.
We hear that from a lot of automakers.
Yeah.
We think we found your car.
Oh my goodness.
This is CBC North on your smart TV because CBC News is now streaming local. Local news and weather on your connected TV or favorite device. CBC News North, streaming now.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang.
Detective Constable, let's go.
Don't discount her instincts.
She'll follow them with or without you.
Is that right? Police, open up!
By yourself!
In my experience, it's best to know what she's thinking.
You lied to me. You played me like I was one of your marks.
I could be on the other side of the world right now.
You've gone soft. You need to be focused on the long game.
Who has more fun than us?
Everybody.
The only person you can count on is you, yourself, alone.
Team Iqaluit has won a volleyball tournament in Yellowknife. It's their second time competing. 6 men from Iqaluit and 1 from the NWT competed in the Open Territorial Championship over the weekend. The team came in second last year at the competition. They say they knew what to expect this year and had their eyes on the prize.
It was so much fun. We had our minds set on going back and beating them this year.
Team faced Yellowknife's Frosted Tips in the finals, the same team they lost to last year. They came out victorious this year, though, winning 3 straight sets. The Invictus Games begins tomorrow, and for the first time, winter sports are being added to the competition. The games are for wounded veterans from around the world. This year, they're being held in Vancouver and Whistler, BC. And some big names from the entertainment world will be joining in to help kick things off. Yvette Brent has that story.
Athletes are training on the slopes, preparing to compete for the Invictus Games this weekend. This year will debut winter sports like skiing and snowboarding.
I am ski 6 days.
Ukraine's Arsen Ryaboshyapko hit the slopes for the first time just last week.
Invictus Game для мене це ніби.
For me, Invictus Games is like a swallow of fresh air. It's a new chance and a new challenge.
So remember the pushing into the button on the left side and pushing on the right side. And then I want you to...
By day 3 on skis, this ex-soldier was doing black diamond runs, the most difficult at Whistler.
He's so passionate about skiing, and I think he'd already studied skiing before he came here, and I was so blown away by how quickly he progressed. I think he's the fastest person I've ever taught.
Invictus Games for Wounded Veterans is now more than a decade old. Founded by Prince Harry, who broke the ice last year on a skeleton sled.
The smiles on the faces that I've seen over the last few days, it proves why we do what we do.
Royal watchers say Harry and Meghan Markle are expected at the opening ceremony Saturday here in BC with Katy Perry, Nelly Furtado and Coldplay's Chris Martin. Hundreds of competitors hailing from 23 nations will compete.
It's not about sport, it's about individual healing journeys.
3 years ago, this Ukrainian soldier's legs were shattered by bullets as Russians attacked Bakhmut. Now he's skiing mountains he once had only seen from a ship.
My first love is sea, ocean. Second love is mountain. I have second love right now.
This new sport, a fresh perspective for this vet and hundreds of others here. Yvette Brent, CBC News, Vancouver.
A play that deals with themes of systemic racism, police brutality, and who gets to tell other people's stories will have a stage reading in Iqaluit. The event is being put on as part of Black History Month.
She shot someone, the city was sued, she was suspended, vilified in the press, quit, moved home. Now she doesn't work, she doesn't leave the house, she doesn't eat, she starts smoking. Who starts smoking at 30?
That's an excerpt from the play Bang Bang, read by Muriel Jassa. The play was originally written by playwright Kat Sandler. The reading in Iqaluit is put on by the Nunavut Theatre Company. It's about a young Black police officer named Lila who's on leave from the police service after shooting an unarmed Black youth. A white playwright decides to write about her story, later telling Lila that the play is going to be turned into a movie, which re-traumatizes her.
Let's say that systemic racism is definitely having no choice whatsoever. You know, not having the right of representation, the right of being portrayed the way that is truthful your experience.
The play will run from February 13th to the 15th, and people can watch it at the museum. Challenges to books are on the rise in Canada. Now, an investigation by the Fifth Estate has revealed a shadow war on libraries. Mark Kelly reports on the battle over books, bans, and the freedom to read.
The Airdrie Public Library, just north of Calgary, finds itself caught in the crosshairs of a culture war targeting libraries across Canada and the U.S. Under fire, books about sex education, gender identity, or titles with gay themes and characters, like this one.
It just teaches kids about Pride Festival and what happens at them. So this one, along with quite a few other titles we've had, were found actually in our toilet in the women's washroom.
Kelly Lawson has been tracking which library books have been drawing fire, and there are plenty. In 2023, there were 4 times more book challenges in Canada than the pre-pandemic average.
You have that right to choose for your children what they view. It's not your responsibility or right to choose for other people.
Who here feels that horrible things are happening in our libraries?
David Parker is the founder of the grassroots movement Take Back Alberta, which aims in part to change the face of the province, one book at a time, one library at a time.
What are the horrible things, in your opinion, that are going on in the libraries?
Well, they're introducing them to a sexual identity, right? They're introducing them to a sexual way of being. They're making sex primary. Children don't need that. Children need to be children.
Calls for crackdowns on libraries have been answered across the country, with protests and counter-protests. Libraries have faced legal threats and bomb threats. Do you think these attacks on books and libraries is the message that LGBTQ and trans folks don't belong in this country?
Absolutely. It's really kind of a first step towards a broader redefinition of who is truly part of Canada.
As for those books in Airdrie with a target on their spine?
Just so we're clear, all these books that got thrown in the toilet, we reordered. So we'll bring them back for people.
Mark Kelly, CBC News, Airdrie, Alberta.
A new Yukon documentary explores a rare breed of worker, the people who staff remote fire towers. The film is called Fire Tower. It follows some of the people who staff the lookouts in British Columbia and the Yukon. Despite a growing number of wildfires, just 4 jurisdictions in Canada still use fire towers. The film's director says despite advances in technology, there's still a place for human fire lookouts. And she says the job attracts a certain type of person.
It's really all kinds of people, especially Alberta has so many lookouts. Every age, every kind of person is doing this job, but the one thing they really have in common is their absolute love for solitude. And that's what's really special and something that for me is important in the film, just that they would say, people are like, oh, are you lonely? And they would, or, does it feel lonely out there? And they would say, like, absolutely not. To them, it's solitude versus loneliness. And there's such a strong connection that you have with your environment that you feel more at peace often than you do in a city.
Fire Tower is playing as part of the Available Light Film Festival. It screens in Whitehorse on Sunday. Avon Senior Centre in Yellowknife has had rabbits for years. The animals are part of their pet therapy program, and recently they've been looking for new volunteer bunny handlers. We tagged along with a mother-daughter duo on their very first shift.
So one of the ways we swaddle them to be able to carry around for visits is we put our receiving blankets down, and we also put an extra blanket in the center, so then that way they don't have okay. So we swaddle them like this, just like you would swaddle a baby. It might be every couple of weeks too. That will give them a little spa bath.
Yeah.
And they actually like it.
How about you choose this one? And then next time we'll switch, okay?
We're still practicing on training them, so sometimes they're very resistant. It helps lower, like for physical, it helps lower their blood pressure.
Over your ears, okay? Like that.
Lower their heart rate and reduces stress. And some of the emotional, it decreases anxiety, depression, and for social interaction and that with the bunny and that. And then cognitive, the mental health benefits of being able to interact with the bunny, and if you feel comfortable, then
Would you want to give them baths or
you could watch us a couple of times. We could do it when you come. And then after that, if you feel comfortable, you could give them a spa bath too.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a great weekend.
The question is,
I'm just going to ask.
I want to ask you about
why is this such a big deal?
What does the science say?
what was their reaction?
What are we talking about here?
Who told you?
So, to be clear,
What would you say to them?
what is the actual story there?
Big question is what's going to happen tomorrow?
Let's talk about some serious topics now.
What should you do?
What happened?
What are you going through? Tell us about that moment.
What she means by that.
How would they have known that? What we're hearing from people is
I think we can explain.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
Russian scam here.
shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job? Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Stream anytime. CBC News.
This is CBC North on your smart TV because CBC News is now streaming local. Local news and weather on your connected TV or favorite device. CBC News North, streaming now.
Being Black in Canada, a space for news, documentaries, arts, and more. Celebrating a uniquely Canadian perspective on Black issues. With the cultural moments that matter to Black Canadians. Visit cbc.ca/Being Black in Canada.
We're here to get it done!
We're here to show up and show off!
Here we go, let's play the feud, Canadian style, here we go!
Family Feud Canada. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Detective Constable.
Don't discount her instincts. She'll follow them with or without you.
Go yourself!
In my experience, it's best to know what she's thinking.
I've never seen anything like this before.
Being there means being here.
The city is now very still.
To share.
I do worry about them.
Adrian Arsenault reports on CBC News. Stream free.